Hi everyone, thank you for joining. I'm Alex Aubrey and I wear a few hats. I'm a GP partner in Merthyr, I'm clinical lead for AI at HEIW, and I also lead on multidisciplinary primary care education across Cwm Taf Morgannwg Health Board. So that combination of clinical practice, education strategy and emerging technologies gives me quite a privileged vantage point. I get to see how AI is landing with real clinicians, how learners are starting to use it in ways we hadn't even planned for, and how our education systems are scrambling to keep up. So what I wanted to share today isn't speculative. These are real examples from NHS Wales, what's happening right now in our workforce, our training programs, and increasingly in everyday clinical practice. So rather than talk about AI as something on the horizon, I wanted to start by grounding us in where we actually are, because like it or not, we are already in it. Now I like this image because it captures the feeling a lot of people have right now. That sense that AI has suddenly appeared in every corner and we're not entirely sure whether we're meant to be impressed, alarmed, or slightly amused. Maybe a bit of each. We've got students quietly using AI to generate their essays, and meanwhile, academics are starting to experiment with AI to help to mark them. And somewhere between those two ends of the process, we risk missing the point entirely if our only concern is using AI cheating. The real shift isn't that AI can produce text, it's that knowledge work itself, writing, summarizing, synthesizing, is no longer the scarce skill it once was. And for an education system that has relied on those outputs as a proxy for learning, that's quite a fundamental disruption. What we are seeing, especially in healthcare education, is that AI isn't waiting quietly for us to design policy. It's already being used, sometimes thoughtfully, often experimentally, and occasionally in ways that create risk. But there's no doubt the genie is fully out of the bottle. And that's why this conversation can't just be about bans and ethics statements. It has to be about how we redesign education, assessment, and professional development for a world where AI is a constant companion in every learning and clinical moment. So let's look more closely at where we actually are today. To understand what needs to change, we need to be brutally honest about where our education systems are right now. When we look at our current education system, both undergraduate and postgraduate, the reality is that formal AI education is still minimal. I've spoken to several medical schools in my roles. Now, a year ago, AI education was optional, framed as an interesting add-on. But this year, some have begun embedding it formally. But the mindset is still often, well, our students already know how to use ChatGPT. What else is there to teach other than maintaining academic rigor and integrity? And this is where we hit the first disconnect. Knowing that a tool exists is not the same as being literate in its safe, ethical, responsible use. Trainees are already using generative AI. That's not the question. The question is, do they understand data responsibility, academic integrity, bias, consent, and so on? The Russell Group guidance on AI in education makes this really clear, and although it's written for universities, the principles apply to any organisation or individual delivering education. They highlight 5 core responsibilities. 1. Support staff and learners to become AI literate, not just using AI. Equip educators to help learners use these tools effectively and not fearfully. 3. Adapt teaching and assessment. Don't just bolt AI on top of old models. 4. Protect integrity and rigor, because if everything becomes AI assisted, your quality assurance mechanisms need to evolve. And finally, 5. Collaborate and share best practice, because none of us can figure all this out in isolation. JISC, who lead digital innovation in tertiary education, recently surveyed teaching staff and found something very telling. Most educators are not trying to ban AI. They're trying to use it pragmatically. They accept it's here to stay and are asking not for restrictions, but for guidance, training, and clarity, particularly around assessment and ethics. So this is where we are. A huge uptake, minimal structure, enthusiasm, but uneven literacy. Usage, but without consistent guardrails. And that is why we need to look beyond education in isolation, because exactly the same tension is playing out in clinical practice. So let's shift that lens from education to what's happening on the front line in healthcare. If we shift our focus from education to clinical practice, the pattern is strikingly similar. Around 1 in 5 GPs are now using some form of AI tool regularly in their week-to-week workflows, not because a policy told them to, and not because it was nicely integrated or fully governed, but out of sheer necessity. The reality on the ground is that burnout, documentation burden, and demand capacity mismatch are driving clinicians to reach for any tool that helps them to survive the working day. And increasingly, that tool is AI. This isn't just typing things into ChatGPT. We're already seeing AI-enabled tools in radiology, cardiovascular imaging interpretation, and stroke scanning, where models can flag high-risk images in seconds and surface what a human might otherwise take much longer to detect. In endoscopy, we now have AI-assisted polyp detection systems watching alongside the clinician, quietly highlighting anomalies in real time. But interestingly, and slightly worryingly, early evidence now suggests that when you remove the AI support after prolonged use, clinician performance actually drops below baseline. So here is the uncomfortable question. If AI improves outcomes in the moment, but risks de-skilling professionals over time, how do we justify that trade-off? Do we accept the dependency because the immediate clinical benefit is higher? Or do we design education and governance so that AI supports skill development and not skill erosion? And of course, in primary care, we now have ambient AI scribes, tools that listen to the consultation and transcribe in real time, summarize and produce a structured clinical record. That's 30 to 40% of a GP's time potentially given back. Now here is the key distinction. At the moment, much of this is consumer-level adoption or vendor-led deployment. Wales has a window, a real opportunity, not just to adopt these tools, but to define how AI should be used safely, bilingually, ethically, and with workforce well-being and patient safety at the centre. And that's where our work in Wales becomes really interesting, because we're not just observing AI, we're actively building AI-enabled learning tools to prepare the workforce for the shift. So let's look now at what we've already built in Wales, because we haven't waited for permission, we've started laying the foundations. So this is the first building block in our approach to encouraging AI literacy in Wales, the Foundations in AI module. This is our entry-level course designed to give every member of NHS Wales staff a shared baseline understanding of AI. It's available for free online via our LMS at Dysgu and deliberately written in plain language so it works as well for a nurse, a manager, or a member of the admin team. The module covers 4 essentials. What AI actually is, trying to demystify the jargon. Where AI is already being used in health and care with real examples. The opportunities and the risks, from reducing workload to issues like bias, safety, and ethics. Governance and responsibility, setting out the standards, laws, and professional accountabilities that apply. So it takes around 20 minutes to complete. It's interactive with short reflections and quizzes, and staff receive a certificate they can use as CPD evidence. Why does this matter? Well, it means we can build a digitally confident workforce where everybody has the same foundation level and can ask the right questions when AI tools are introduced. It's not about making people technical experts. It's about confidence, competence, and a common language across professions. And once staff have that baseline, we can take the next step with something more interactive and personalised. So let's shift that lens from education in the foundation to personalised learning around artificial intelligence. So now I want to show you HALI, the Healthcare AI Learning Interface. This is a tool we've built in Wales to give health and care staff a safe way to explore how AI can affect the role. It's designed to move beyond theory and give people personalised insights linked directly to their day-to-day work. So when you open HALI, the first thing you'll do is type in your job role. That could be a GP, a nurse, a pharmacist, or a practice manager, and so on. HALI then asks you to choose which NHS England workforce archetype you most identify with. And that helps to tailor the conversation even further, so that a frontline clinician will get a very different perspective, say, to a digital leader or administrator. From there, HALI generates a personalised learning journey, exploring opportunities where AI could help you in your specific role, challenges, the risks and limitations to be aware of, and also the responsibilities, including data governance, safety, and ethics. So the reason this matters is that this approach does three things for us in NHS Wales. It further builds AI literacy at scale, giving every staff member a baseline understanding without needing a formal course. It supports safe adoption. Staff learn to spot the risks early, like bias, data security, or over-reliance on automation. It creates a culture of curiosity and innovation, where people can test ideas and reflect on how technology might impact their patients and their workflows. The key point is that getting started is as simple as writing your job role, choosing the archetype that fits, and exploring with HALI what it has to say. We think it's a friendly, accessible way of making sure that our workforce isn't just using AI because it's there, but using it safely, responsibly, and with a clear understanding of both the opportunities and the limits. So a lot of the conversation around AI in education is centered around one question. Is it cheating? And I understand why. When a tool can produce an essay in 30 seconds, it feels like it bypasses effort. And our instinct is to protect standards. But here's a different lens. AI doesn't have to be a shortcut. It can be a scaffold. In years gone by, Benjamin Bloom found something extraordinary. When a learner has access to one-to-one human tutors, their performance improves by 2 standard deviations compared to the traditional classroom teaching. He called it the 2 sigma problem. And what this means is the average student with personalised guidance jumps into the top 2 to 3% of the cohort. The problem was, and still is, cost. Human one-to-one tutoring at scale has always been impossible, until now. And with systems like HALI and with adaptive learning pathways through Delegates, our learning management system, we are beginning to offer something very close to that level of personalised feedback, available at any time in English or Welsh, accessible to every healthcare professional, regardless of their geography or shift pattern. So rather than framing AI as a way of getting around the work, we can frame it as a way of getting deeper into learning faster by giving every learner a tutor that doesn't get tired, doesn't judge, and can revisit the same concept 15 times if needed, and at 2 a.m. if needed. This isn't about replacing educators, it's about empowering them and learners, almost giving them what would have been thought to be superpowers just short years ago. The danger isn't that people will use AI, it's that they will use it badly, or that we build educational systems that fail to capitalize on it. But if AI can really provide this sort of support, it also raises a much bigger challenge. How are we going to assess learning in a world where AI is always present? And this is where things can get uncomfortable. For over a century, much more, written output, essays, reflective pieces, case analysis has been the proxy we use to judge understanding, professionalism, empathy, and effort. But as Professor Ethan Mollick puts it, a ripple effect of today's AI is that not enough people are considering how much we rely on it as a signal of competence, and that signal is now gone. When AI can write fluently and increasingly in a clinically relevant tone, the old model of submit a written assignment and we'll mark it no longer tells us who understands, who can reason, or who can apply judgment. And this isn't theoretical. Medical schools and postgraduate programs are already reporting a rise in AI-generated submissions. Some have introduced a traffic light system, green, amber, and red, based on how much AI is permitted in an assignment. Others have already shifted to in-person vivas, simulation-based assessment, and observed performance tasks. In short, assessment is forced back toward authenticity. And maybe, just maybe, that's not a bad thing, because healthcare is not a written profession. It's a spoken, observed, decision-making profession. We don't treat essays with essays, but it does mean this. If AI becomes a constant learning companion, then our assessment systems must evolve, not to catch people out, but to accurately capture competence in a world where AI is normalized. Also, should we raise the bar of what we expect of our graduates? Otherwise, we risk certifying people who are highly proficient at prompting, but not necessarily at practicing. So how do we respond to this? What does an AI-enabled learning assessment journey actually look like? So if we accept that AI is here, that assessment needs to change, and that our role is not to resist but to shape, then the question becomes, what does a deliberately designed AI-enabled learning journey actually look like? And this is where Wales has a real opportunity, because unlike much larger systems, we are connected enough to actually do this end-to-end. So imagine this journey. Stage 1, we build things like our Careersville platform to create an AI career navigator. An example, a 15-year-old in North Wales is exploring healthcare careers, and he shouldn't just see static job profiles. They could ask in Welsh or English, what A-levels do I need to be a paramedic? What does a cardiac physiologist actually do? And they get an instant tailored pathway. Next, undergraduate and early training via a Tudusky. So instead of linear e-learning, we can introduce adaptive modules. If a learner struggles with pharmacology, the system slows down, offers additional micro-quizzes, mini-explainers, even safe conversational scenarios. If they're flying, it accelerates. Simulation and placement. So before a trainee even steps into a clinical placement, they've already interacted with AI-driven virtual patient scenarios that give instant feedback, not just on clinical knowledge, but also communication, tone, the structure of the consultation. And this is something that we're looking forward to start prototyping. Next, CPD and appraisal. Post-qualification, rather than generic CPD catalogues, clinicians can have a personal AI mentor, like HALI and its future successors, that notices gaps in logged practice, signposts further modules, generates personalised scenarios, and even can help to draft reflections based on real clinical encounters that the clinician then can edit, supporting but not replacing professional judgment. And also workforce planning feedback loop. This is the real strategic win. The data from all of this can feed back into workforce intelligence. If we see rising demand in a specialty or a dip in confidence around a skill, we can help commission numbers and training content in real time. That's not a distant vision. All of these components already exist in parts. The opportunity to Wales is to connect them safely, bilingually, and with governance as a spine, not an inhibitory cage. But to do that, we need to shift the mindset from AI as a threat to standards to AI as a strategic lever. And that requires us to confront one more uncomfortable truth. I like to pause on this image before any text appears because it represents what we default to in healthcare and education, the status quo. In psychology, there's a well-known cognitive bias called the status quo bias. This is the tendency to overestimate the risk of changing something while underestimating the risk of leaving it exactly how it is. And we see this everywhere in the AI conversation. Let's wait for national guidance. Let's pause until the regulation is clearer. Let's hold off until someone else proves it works or doesn't. But here's the reality. AI is already in the hands of the workforce. They're using it, not always safely and not always ethically, but they're using it because the current system is not sustainable without augmentation. And that's why our mindset needs to shift from risk aversion to risk management, because doing nothing is not neutral. It carries its own risks. Regulatory and reputational risk if we fail to provide governance and things go wrong. Future-proofing risk if we design new curricula, new digital systems, new assessment models without AI in mind. We'll just have to rebuild them again in the near future. The talent risk is significant. If Wales doesn't create the conditions for safe AI innovation, the innovators will go elsewhere. And as Professor Ethan Mollick puts it, the only bad way to react to AI is to pretend it doesn't change anything. So our job isn't to slow everything down until it's safe. Our job is to move at the pace of safety, not at the pace of fear. If we accept that reality, that AI is here and our role is to shape it responsibly, how do we actually structure that? How do we turn experimentation into a safe, scalable system asset? For most of the digital era, let's call it digital 1.0, innovation followed a predictable pattern. A large company builds a tool, sells it to a health board, and then we spend many years trying to make it fit our workflows. Often it doesn't integrate, doesn't reflect frontline reality and requirements, and by the time it's live, the problem has moved on. Innovation is something done to the workforce and not with the workforce. But AI changes that completely. For the first time, a GP trainee in Merthyr, a Band 5 nurse in Bridgend, or a healthcare support worker in Powys can design a tiny AI assistant that solves a very specific, very real problem, something that could be so niche that no commercial vendor would ever bother building it. And here's the real opportunity for Wales. This is where I would like to see the future. Building a GPT repository, a digital 2.0 ecosystem where frontline created tools are submitted, validated for safety, Welsh language performance and clinical appropriateness, and then shared across the entire system as approved micro solutions. That means Wales doesn't just consume AI products, we become the publishers of safe, bilingual, context-specific AI tools built by the workforce, for the workforce. That's true democratization of innovation. And if we can do that, if we can move from this 1.0 procurement to 2.0 co-creation and shared validation, then AI truly stops being a threat and starts becoming a genuine national asset. The issue and the challenge is to build the infrastructure to allow this future to exist. To close, let me leave you with this thought. I spotted this image on LinkedIn. I tried to trace the original creator to credit them properly, but I couldn't find it. Whoever they are, they captured something brilliantly uncomfortable. I'm sure you can remember saying, AI won't replace you. Then we softened it to, AI won't replace you, but someone using AI probably will. And then along comes this. Tractors won't replace horses, but horses that learn to drive tractors will replace those that don't. No, let's be honest. Tractors did replace horses on farms. And that's the point. It's a joke, but it's also a warning. Once a new capability arrives, the definition of what it means to be useful changes, and it rarely snaps back. AI is our horse and tractor moment. So the real question for us in healthcare education isn't will AI replace us? It's will we adapt fast enough to remain essential in a world where AI is everywhere? If we equip our workforce to use it, to shape it, then AI becomes an amplifier of human skill. We raise the bar. If we don't, well, we've all seen what happened to the horses.